everyone. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at algebraic reasoning. So first, we're going to start off by looking at some of our algebraic properties that we use. And we're also going to take a look at an example where we'll discuss how we use the reasoning to go through the solving process. This will eventually lead us into geometric reasoning, where we're going to be using the same sort of logic system, the same sort of steps, to solve problems dealing with geometry. But let's start with looking at our different properties. So I have 6 total that we tend to use. The first 4 of these properties allow me to do something to both sides of an equal sign. So when we're dealing with an equation, we need to maintain that equality. Well, these properties are the things that say I can do this. So let's say we have an equation. So I'm just going to say if A is equal to B. My first property, the addition property of equality, this allows me to add the same number to both sides of this equation. So then, for example, if A and B is my equation, I can add another number, maybe C, to both sides. And this is still a true statement. Right? If I think about a balance or a scale, and the equal sign is my scale in the middle, if I add the same value to both sides, the scale isn't tipped at all. The subtraction property says the same exact thing. So if I start off with an equation, if A is equal to B, then in this case, I can subtract the same thing from both sides. And it's the same logic here. Okay, just maintaining that equality. And multiplication and division, it's the same idea, but now we're just using our other operations. So multiplication, we can multiply both sides by the same number. In division, we can divide both sides by the same number. The next one, this is the property that relates together multiplication and addition. So without this property, we wouldn't be able to combine those two operations together. So the distributive property, so we have addition and we have multiplication, and we're relating them together. So let's say if we have A times B plus C in parentheses. So in parentheses, there's our addition, and then here out front, that's our multiplication. And then the distributive property says that this is the same as AB plus AC. In other words, the A gets multiplied across that addition sign. And then the last one, the substitution property. This says that if two numbers are equal to each other or two variables, then we can substitute that in to any expression containing that variable. So I'll just write this out. So if A is equal to B, then A can be substituted for B in any expression. All right, so those are our 6 properties for algebra that we use to solve equations. And now let's take a look at an example. And I want to talk about the process, our algebraic reasoning that we use to solve an equation. So here's my equation. 2 times x plus 1 is equal to negative 10 plus 3x. Now, when I go through the process of solving this, every step that I take can be justified with one of my properties. So I'm going to start off by rewriting my original equation. Our original equation, this is just our given information. So this is kind of our starting point. Now, as I go through this solving process, I want to justify every step that we take. So the first thing I would do in solving this equation is I'm going to take the 2 and I'm going to distribute it to both the x and the 1. So I get 2x plus 2, and then the right-hand side of my equation is going to stay the same. And my justification, so this second step, this second piece of justification here tells me how I went from step 1 to step 2. And what I used there was the distributive property. All right, let's continue on by solving. So the next thing, I want to group up my variable terms. So maybe I would subtract 3x from both sides. If I subtract 3x from the left-hand side, I end up with negative x. If I subtract 3x from the right-hand side, 3x minus 3x will just give me 0. And then my justification, again, how did I go from step 2 to step 3? My reasoning there is the subtraction property of equality. So let's keep going, keep solving. I need to isolate my variable term. So we need to move the plus 2. So if I subtract 2 from the left-hand side, 2 minus 2 gives me 0. And on the right-hand side, negative 10 minus 2, we get negative 12. And here, our justification. How did I go from step 3 to step 4? This is the subtraction property again. And our last step, I have a negative x. I want that to be a positive x. So why don't we multiply both sides by a negative 1? So that gives me a positive x. And then negative 12 times negative 1, we get a positive 12. And then our last justification, how did we go from step 4 to step 5? We used the multiplication property of equality. And there's our answer. So a lot of times when we're solving equations, we don't write down these justifications. But these are the properties that allow us to solve equations like this. These are the things that are happening in the background. These are the pieces that make sure that this logic makes sense.